My name is Daniel Swärd, and I have the great pleasure to welcome Cathy Zeglinski from Canada. Whistler, you're a doctor for 30 years. You began when you were 26, and you were a world champion in the Masters mountain bike twice already. And you try to burnout proof other people's life. You try to strengthen them, and you're a CEO of Empowered Med. Welcome to a conversation about the body and what you can do to make the most out of it, just like you done.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. And tell us, Cathy, why should we start out mountain biking? What does it bring to life?
Well, mountain biking and road cycling are such a great way to get out in nature, get outside, have our bodies in motion. And the rhythmical part of cycling is very meditative and very calming. And what we do know about cycling is that it takes the load off our joints. And so it can be done right through the later stages of life. And that means that people can be on a bicycle from the first time on a running bike with a little one, or right until the end of life. And so cycling gives people the ability to move through the world in a way that is so fantastic. And mountain biking is my passion, but I was also a road cyclist in my early days at the competitive level, and I do both.
And in 1987, you did a Tour de France Feminin. Tell us about that journey throughout the beautiful landscapes of France.
Well, I love France, and I speak French because my early schooling was in French. So I always find the French people so incredible and welcoming, and incredible food as well. So that's always an incentive. And when I did the Tour de France, it was an incredible epic. It's a moving show of the most extreme cycling. The women always started before the men and a much further distance up the road because we were limited to 100 kilometers at a time. And we had all the same spectators lining the roads, all the same people cheering for us. And we finished the stages an hour before the men. So we were the first part, and then the caravan with all the swag, the hats and things came after us. So we were part of the Tour de France, one of the most amazing spectacles of sport in the world. It was an incredible experience.
And in 2013, you went to South Africa to take your first World Championship title in the Masters mountain bike. Tell us about that journey.
Well, it was a long way to go, and it was quite a daunting experience to go solo. I had been there in 2011 at the Cape Epic, a long stage race, a team race. So I had been in South Africa once, but I had not driven on the road. And for us, it's the wrong side of the road. So that was a bit terrifying. And so there was a lot of lead up to get there. And in the first training ride, I fell heavily and I dislocated my sternoclavicular joint. So it was not an easy win. I didn't tell anyone I had injured myself. I could not lift my arm, but the amazing thing is I could still ride a bike. And I was absolutely convinced I was going to win. I had trained so hard, there was nothing stopping me. And so I raced my heart out and I did win the event. And then I had to deal with the repercussions of my injury. It did lead to surgery, but the feeling of having, it's called the rainbow jersey of rainbow stripes, and standing on the podium as the world champion was an incredible honor. And so that was an amazing thing to have a goal and achieve your goal through coaching and training.
And between 87 and 2013, was a long journey. You did a lot of stage races.
Yes.
In those years. Tell us about that journey. You've been traveling throughout the world, traveling throughout Canada with the bike.
There's a whole sort of linkage of races, and you'll see some of the same racers at the races like the Alp Epic, the Swiss Epic, the Cape Epic, the BC Bike Race, La Ruta, and all of these different races that are throughout the world. And in every country, there's usually at least one of these stage races, if not more, that go from a minimum of 3 days, but most of them are a week long, where people travel from all over the world. It's an incredible experience. Every day you move to a new town. And so it's this moving caravan of athletes, and it can be up to 1,200 people, plus all the supporters. Some of the people are professional athletes. They're a salaried professional bike racer, and other people are amateur hobbyists, but everybody has a mass start, and the finish line is usually a distance of anywhere from minimum of 4 hours for myself up to 13 hours the one day for one of the races. And so you are with this massive group of men and women who start together. And so it's an incredible camaraderie. You're all working together. And then at the end, there's the meals and the après events. And so it's almost like summer camp for adults. It's really an amazing experience.
And if you were to become a philosopher and write about the very essence of cycling, of cyclists, what would you write then? A chapter?
Well, I would say that cyclists are alone in themselves when they're riding a bike, pushing through often quite an intense pain in the body. It can really hurt, and it doesn't end in seconds, it ends in hours. So there's a mental fortitude about pushing through pain, physical pain, and also pushing through the concept that you're not going to find this end for a long time. And if you're mountain biking, you're in the middle of the woods somewhere, so you can't just quit. So it is a real exploration of the human psyche to know that you are going to start on a start line and it's going to hurt and it's not going to end. And what it does is it teaches you that you can overcome those feelings, and that those feelings will come multiple times in a race, but that if you work with your body to give it a little bit of relaxation, of recovery, that you can go on a little further. And that is something that teaches people, I think, that if they set out on a goal, they can achieve their goal, because there'll be hard times. But if they just give themselves a little recovery, they can push through.
Mm. And you, as a medical doctor, what comes on the other side of pain? I mean, pain is a warning signal for something in the body, but when you push through that.
Well, pain, if you're doing something like with an injured body part and it's screaming at you, stop, you do have to listen to that. But there's a pain that's a physical effort pain, where your muscles are sore and your muscles and your brain are telling you that you're pushing through. It's a learning with sport, and I think that's why athletes can be very successful in other careers, is at what point is your body telling you something to protect itself, and at what point is your body trying to make you take the easy way out. And that is something to learn progressively, because we don't want to hurt the body to the point that it cannot recover, but also learning when your body is saying, this is tough, and you may need to give it a few minutes of like spinning or easier, or mentally like giving yourself a little bit of a break, and then you can push through. So it's a balancing act for sure.
Mm. And you grew up in Winnipeg, where there's 50 minus degrees Celsius in the winter and 40 plus in the summer. So you toughen up there early
Yes.
on. It's how was that start as an athlete and as an intellectual becoming a doctor?
Well, as the child of an immigrant to Canada, my father was born in Poland, and as a child, World War II, he had a very tough journey overland from Poland to Siberia, down to Tanzania, Africa, to then Winnipeg. He very much believed that he couldn't raise children that would be soft. So he made us walk, long distances to the school bus in that temperature. And that toughened me up that I was capable. And I think so often people don't know what they're capable of until they've had a journey or an effort where they realize what they thought was not possible is absolutely possible. So for me, growing up with such tough conditions to ride a bicycle, I was also an alpine ski racer and cross-country ski racer, to know that you can overcome so many obstacles, but that it seems inconceivable until you do it. And that was growing up in Winnipeg taught me I could overcome anything if I just had a strategy for it.
Mm. And what's the most important lesson you learned from your parents?
My mother was ahead of her time as a university professor in the days where a lot of women were not working outside the home, and quite a strong feminist. And so she taught me that women could do anything they set their minds to. And that nowadays people take that for granted, but there were a lot of women that were part of the changing of that structural role for women. And so from my mother, that was very important. From my father, he taught me that if I had a goal, I had to figure out the 3-month, 6-month, year, lifetime goal, and how was I going to achieve it, that there are building blocks that take you there. So the goal looks so impossible when you start, but you just break it down into manageable chunks and it becomes possible.
Mm. And in 2019, the World Championship mountain bike came to Quebec in your own country.
Right.
Tell us about racing at your home turf.
Well, that was, to be honest, one of the very first times I had raced, because most of these stage races I did were in Europe. So I knew a lot of the Europeans better than, I knew racing in Canada. But the fantastic part was that many of the juniors that I had ridden with and other people from other countries were there to cheer on. I was quite convinced that I was going to win it. And I told people I was training to win the World Championship. I think some people found that rather, not presumptuous, but, inconceivable that I could state that. But one of the things I've learned is if you say your goal and you speak it out loud, you take a dream and you create reality. And it's really important. If someone says to one person they're going to achieve something, they're much more likely to achieve it. If they put it out on social media, they're far more likely to achieve it because it creates accountability. So every time I didn't want to train, every time I didn't want to do it, I knew that I had already broadcast that I wanted to win. And so it creates an accountability. So going to the event was really fun because I rented a townhome and I had several of the Canadian junior athletes in the townhome with me because their coach was my friend who was staying in the townhouse with me. So we were like the Canadian junior team in our townhome. And then I knew many of the other athletes who were there competing. So it was a really fun 2 weeks. It was great.
Mm. And you have a son, 19 years old now. How do you bring the gift of training to your kids? How do you take that torch?
Well, yeah. My son would win the junior triathlons. He went into the road cycling with just one season of training and was one of the top in the province. But his passion has not been the cycling aspect. His passion was ski racing. And he had a couple bad years where he had head injuries and lost teeth and had quite a setback. So he's been out of the competitive sport for like 3 years now. We weren't sure how safe it was for him to compete, but because of COVID, he's returned to ski racing and he's passionate about it. he wants to try to take it to the next level. So he has the talent, he has the will, and now he just has to put the steps into place.
And you have big projects and you have small projects. Now you have a cleaning trash that brings society together in your home backyard.
Right. So my philosophy in life is take control of what you can control. You can't control the world, you can't control the pandemic, but what can you do personally to contribute? So with the approval of our public health that in COVID it's safe to collect trash in our neighborhoods, we started an initiative with hashtag #RidTheVidCleanup. And with the idea of trying to make this go viral through our community and other communities. And so the concept is get outside, do it in a COVID safe way with your own household or your own bubble, and clean up the trash in your neighborhood, especially if you're in a lockdown. What can you do? And so we had all these people in the community getting outside, getting positive reinforcement, cleaning up the trash, and our town is ready and beautiful to receive visitors because we've cleaned up all the trash that collects over the winter and over the year. It's incredible what you can find that people have discarded purposely, like old tires, parts of stoves, boots, gloves, mitts, trash cans, and when that's cleaned up, the environment looks pristine again. It makes you feel good.
And you're the CEO of Empowered Med to burnout proof your life with food, exercise, and recovery. What's the lessons you learn people there? They come to Whistler to relax a little bit, but to be activated as well.
So what we do know is that burnout is when the body and the mind have not had an opportunity to really be its authentic self, to really value in your own life what you find the most important. And when people don't take time to eat well, to move their body in a physical way, and to use recovery tools like we do as an athlete, we know that the body will crash because the body is very good at telling you when you're doing so much and you're not giving it a chance to recover. And so we know that food is medicine, exercise is medicine, and recovery tools are medicine. And recovery tools are quiet time for being mindful, time in nature, time in the sunlight, massage, hydrotherapy, aquatherapy, all the things that we use as athletes so that when we're training, we can recover the body so it can meet those demands. If we don't, we burn out. And we're seeing a lot of people burning out right now.
And what should we do about food? What should we eat to burnout proof our life?
Well, I'm going to make the complex simple because so many people have read so much information. If you put a rainbow in your day and you challenge yourself to eat something from the rainbow at every meal, that's our fruits and vegetables. And so often people don't eat many fruits and vegetables, but if you say, I'm going to eat one color of the rainbow or more at every meal, challenge yourself, all of a sudden you're eating a much more plant-based diet. And that's a really easy way, is just think rainbow. And then the next thing is you want to avoid all the ultra-processed food. There's so much evidence that ultra-processed food is responsible for a lot of the ill health. So how do we do that? Well, if you look at food and you say, can I recognize it? Did it grow in nature? Did it, if you eat on the animal kingdom, did it have eyes? Did it run, swim, crawl? If it didn't, what is it made of? Those are really simple things. And we know that we need really healthy fats. So where do we get those healthy fats from? Was it grown in nature? Or are we starting to have these ultra-processed oils and things? So we do know that those are kind of simple ways of eating. But if you look at your meal and it's colorful and it's not food dyes, that's a really good way of saying, I think I'm eating a lot healthier because you're going to be eating a lot of plants. And experiment, I find with food, people get into sort of mono diets, and often you'll see that food, if it looks brown, you're often seeing ultra processed food. So colors are your friend. And that's a really easy way for most people to look at it.
And you say that regular people and CEOs and such can learn from the sports with recovery to recover fully in order to peak perform at their jobs and not burn out.
Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting because rather than giving people times to sit there, and it used to be people would go outside for a smoke break, which we really need to stop that. Instead, we need a 10-minute active break. And it's shown that productivity increases when people eat better. So the CEOs can bring into their, if they have cafeterias or vending machines, have healthier snacks for people. But I would suggest that there should be a 10-minute walk break with a buddy, morning and evening, and then people get outside and they have to time 10 minutes of moving. If where they live, it's not productive to do so, there are usually stairwells or somewhere where they can actually move their bodies. And if they buddy up with someone so they have accountability, that 10 minutes can increase productivity. So many things when we look at the level of, can we get our people, employees healthier, happier, and less likely to be ill? There's some very simple things that can be integrated, but oftentimes we look to the big things, like we're going to have this big wellness activity, rather than saying on a daily basis, what can we do, what can we institute that will make people healthier? Is give them the food options, give them some exercise options that are part of their daily life, and give them activities in their daily activity life that are simple and easy to actually implement. And that's what I would challenge every CEO out there to say, how can I integrate this, that it's not huge cost, but it actually improves the health of my employees, which is ultimately what people want.
And Cathy, after 30 years as a doctor and a life as an athlete, what's the most profound lesson you learned about mankind? What does it mean to be a human?
What does it mean to be a human? I think that when we look at being human, we need the social connectivity. People do need to be interacting with each other. And that is where I have seen sport be such a beautiful way of getting people together, because of the fact that we need to integrate. And when people are alone too much of the time, they start to actually deteriorate. It's been shown that for longevity, for anti-aging, that connectivity with people in a tribe, shall we say, is so important. And that's where when people actually start to do activities together, they physically are doing something alongside someone, whether it's Tai Chi or yoga or walking, is it makes such a difference to the feeling that you are part of something. And I think with, as the evolution of the wealthier countries, it's really important that we stop being in silos. So right now in the pandemic, the part that's been missing is get outside with another human being in a COVID safe way, and don't lock yourself indoors.
And tell us, Katie, you live in a beautiful country. I traveled a bit in Canada myself. What's the greatest thing about Canada? Why should people move to Canada? And what's the dark side of Canada? What's the one big drawback?
Well, one of the things that Canada has is open country, so much open space in some areas, but people tend to congregate in cities. And so our cities are becoming increasingly desired in the world because Canada has one of the most recognized quality of life index. And I think that, people forget that there are so many other beautiful places beside our big cities. I live in Whistler, which is a phenomenally beautiful mountainous area. And people have always gravitated here for the sports that are sort of extreme sports, the snowboarding and the mountain biking things. But what we have that's so fantastic is that we have also places where people can be alone and places where people can be contemplative. So I think Canada has just so much out there in terms of land mass that is unexplored. The dark side of Canada is that we're facing challenges with an aging population, and we're facing the challenges that many industrialized countries are facing, which is that we're having struggles with the medical side of a lack of medical care. So it's really important. What my message is you need to take care of yourself, so you need less medical care as you age.
Fantastic. Cathy, warm thank you for your generous advice, and the best of luck now on your journey with the exciting projects and experiments for the future.
Thank you so much. That's a pleasure to talk to you today.